this on the Clean Virginia Waterways website, along with a meeting summary, so you all can reference this and other folks can check back in.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, Karen. Hi.
Hi, I'm Karen Forget, and I'm the director of LR Now in Virginia Beach. And I'm very familiar with the problem of not having an effective way for boat owners to dispose of boats. So because there isn't really a way for them to do it correctly, they just let them sit and sink, or they intentionally sink them, or abandon them on wetlands and other areas. So, or just leave them tied up at marinas and walk away. So, we've been aware of this problem for a long time, and often get complaints from residents who see these, half sunken boats, and it's just been an ongoing problem of what can they do? It's there aren't good alternatives in place right now for boat owners. So that's my main reason for really having a keen interest in this this work group, especially in, how do we reach out to boat owners and let them know what their alternatives are, how to properly dispose of a boat that they can no longer use or is no longer safe. We're happy to help in getting that message out, but frankly, I have not known what to tell them.
Well, that's what we're hoping to figure out here, right? So we'll dive into that in just a few minutes. But thank you for being here. Megan. Can you hear us, Megan? I see in the chat.
Yes, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I know DEQ sometimes can't use camera or do different things, so I wasn't sure if you were having some issues there. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
You want to introduce yourself? Okay.
Hey, I'm sorry. So I'm a pollution response program coordinator for DEQ's Tidewater Regional Office. I've been here for about just over a year. I'm also leading the removal and deconstruction subcommittee group. I'm just here to listen in today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, next on my screen, I see LCDR Peter Francisco.
Hi, good morning. Still morning. My name is Pete Francisco. Can you see me, hear me? Or am I?
You can see you're a little jumbly on the voice, but it's getting a little better.
Okay.
I'll keep your camera off. Yeah.
I'll turn the camera off. I don't have great reception where I am right now. But I'm Lieutenant Commander Pete Francisco with the Coast Guard Sector Virginia. We've got a couple people on the line here from Sector Virginia, myself on the prevention side, and Petty Officer Jess Sorrell on the response side, and I'll let her introduce herself after. But whenever we get the report to our command center of abandoned or derelict or drift boats, we go through a process of trying to make sure they're not a hazard to navigation. We also frequently get complaints routed to our command center or to our staff regarding abandoned or derelict boats. And really, we don't have much agency authority to deal with the issue directly, other than to monitor and inform and make sure they're not associated with any search and rescue case. But we are, definitely an interested party in reducing this problem and fully aware of the problem. I'm involved in some of the various subcommittees, subgroups of this effort. Really appreciate it. And I had an inquiry from a citizen reported to Congressman Luria's office a complaint of a vessel in Nandoa Creek, and we looked into the issue, saw that it's been a work barge, construction type vessel that's been there for a number of years. And it exemplifies the issue that we're having. We and the owner passed away, and now the estate of the gentleman, MRC is trying to reach out to them to see about it. So, it's a perfect case study for the issue that we're all facing here. So I look forward to contributing and helping however we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, Jess Sorrell?
It's Sorrell. Good morning. I'm MST2 Jess Sorrell. I work over at Sector Virginia with the U.S. Coast Guard on the response side of the house, like Mr. Francisco said earlier. And I'm just here helping out, just kind of listening in today and just kind of seeing where you guys need me.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, and then SSC, I think I saw in the chat that is Julie LaFerriere.
Yep. Hi, this is Julie LaFerriere. I'm the Water Compliance and Pollution Response Manager for the Tidewater Regional Office. So Megan and Renee are on my staff who are in this meeting today, so very lucky to have them. But we generally respond to all sorts of different citizen complaints, and that includes abandoned and derelict vessels. And oftentimes, citizen expectations are that we manage the response or get the appropriate parties involved, give information, make sure the information is flowing between appropriate agencies, all that kind of stuff. So since we're tasked with all that, we're definitely involved in a lot of the different subcommittees, and this is definitely part of that effort. So, but yeah, that's me.
Thank you for being here. Y'all are bouncing around on me here. Alana Keating.
Hi, sorry, I'm a little bit late. I'm Alana Keating. I just jumped in, but I'm Alana Keating. I'm the Director of Outreach at Boat US Foundation. I handle most of our environmental programs, including our work with marine debris, derelict vessels, fishing line, things like that. And I work on our education and outreach on those topics to boaters.
Great, thank you for being here. Okay, Renee McKinnon.
I don't know if I just missed you guys.
Is that Renee? I see Renee, but you're on mute, and then I have a phone number, 540-420-2749.
That's me, Neil Sturman.
Ah, okay, Neil, thank you.
I'm having some computer issues here. Yeah, I'm having computer issues. They're working up the street right now, as a matter of fact. I'm a member of TLAC at Smith Mountain Lake and SMLA at Smith Mountain Lake. That's Tri-County Lakes Administrative Commission and Smith Mountain Lake Association. I've been on most of the subcommittees and just interested in trying to help out with what we're doing today and helping out Smith Mountain Lake get rid of some abandoned derelict vessels here also.
Great. Well, thank you for being here despite the technology difficulties. I definitely get that being on a rural peninsula, so we're glad you're here.
Thank you, Dana.
Renee, did you want to try again? Oh, okay. Good.
Yep. Julie had to remind me I had to unmute my computer and unmute my phone. So I got
Are you the 609 number?
No, I linked my number to the Renee McKinnon, so it didn't show up separately.
All right, great. Thank you. Well, I'll let you go.
So as Julie had mentioned, I work for her out of the Tidewater office. I'm one of the prep coordinators, so that's Megan Keys and I. I started back in March, so just about a year with DEQ now. Previously, I just retired from the Coast Guard before I started this position with 26 years. And while I was active duty Coast Guard, I was in various different positions where I dealt with abandoned derelict vessels from the Coast Guard's perspective. So I have a very good understanding of what the Coast Guard can and can't do and the different policies associated with that. And now just learning more on the state side, what we can and can't do. Just really excited to be part of the work group as a whole and see this moving forward. As mentioned, I was at Sector Virginia for 4 years, so I know the challenges we face here in Virginia with abandoned derelict vessels and how, this is going to be great because as as a group, we're trying to figure out how we can best deal with them and take care of them. But that's it.
Great, thank you for being with us. Let's see, Kimberly Russo, did I call on you yet? I don't think so.
Not yet. Hi, I'm Kim Russo. I'm the director of America's Bright Loop Cruisers Association. Not in Virginia, but we have lots of members in Virginia. Obviously, the Great Loop route goes through Virginia, so our members have lots of concerns really all over the route. Abandoned and derelict vessels has become one of our primary issues that we're trying to work on for our members. You know, from the hazard to navigation that they create, the potential environmental issues. There are things that are big concerns to our members, and we're also seeing, not in Virginia specifically, but in some states where they don't have the problem under control, it's leading to restrictions that really affect cruisers. So instead of solving the actual ADV problem, they're putting in anchoring restrictions and things like that. So that's our primary interest. We really just wanted to be involved to see where we can help.
Great, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And let me see here, Elizabeth Prillaman, say that right, I hope.
Hi, that's me. I'm sorry. I am the executive director of the VMTA, and I'm not exactly sure how I can help, but we're an association of marinas in Virginia, and we have a lot of members who I think are interested in finding out whatever is going on in our state. So I'm just here to listen in and see if there's anything that I can do to help, and please let me know if there is.
Great, thank you so much for being here with us. And I think the last block I see on my screen is a 609-675 number. If you're on the phone, you can press *6 to mute and unmute yourself.
Good morning, this is Lieutenant Tina Bannon. I work at Sector Virginia along with Mr. Francisco and Petty Officer Sorrell. I am in the Incident Management Division, and I'm the Assistant Marine Environmental Response Supervisor. I'm calling in today for Lieutenant Commander Erica Alfquin, who's unable to attend the meeting. So I'll be listening in, taking notes, and providing feedback as necessary. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for joining us and filling in for her. I knew she was not going to be here, but it's great that we've got someone that can report back. Since you're on the phone, I'm going to ask if Mr. Francisco could please put your name and affiliation into the chat box, just so I can get an actual or a correct spelling of your name. For attendance, that would be great. And I jotted down your number. So I think if we've got everyone, we can move on. I was just going to kind of have a general meeting so we can all kind of develop a vision for this subcommittee. But first, I'm going to let Jeff go ahead. He had some updates from the Maryland Marine Debris Reduction Outreach elements.
Oh, this is going to be the Mid-Atlantic plan. I've got to bring up the document.
Sorry.
Maybe do this later in the thing. It's a shared document I got to bring up here on my screen. But the overview is that we have a program under NOAA. We're fully funded by NOAA's Office for Coastal Management, and what they call a Section 309 strategy is something in which it's match-free funding for a 5-year funding cycle. And that's sort of the carrot. The stick is that you have to come up with an enforceable policy at the end of that work. So one of our current strategies as a program is marine debris and the management and hopefully reduction of that. And then ADVs are a smaller subset of that, along with derelict fishing gear, netting, all sorts of things that can entangle wildlife and create navigational hazards. So this is one of 4 buckets and sort of pillars, I guess is probably a better term, to set some goals, work through processes and plans, and update our existing state plan that also aligns with the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Reduction Plan with NOAA and our Mid-Atlantic other state partners. So right now we're in the midst of sort of the overlap of this ADV work group and then aligning those goals to get with the state's Marine Debris Reduction Plan update that was last updated in 2014, I believe. So that's kind of where I'll pivot back later and see where folks have a take on where the outreach and prevention element aligns with that plan to kind of get some feedback. So this is sort of doubling as a public outreach stakeholder engagement meeting as well. But let me circle back to that, Jessica. So just roll with the open discussion and committee goals. Okay. But I'll have that in the background in a second.
Thanks, Jeff. So so I just wanted to start off with sort of what does everybody vision for this group? I know that I spoke with Katie the other week, and I've been speaking with Jeff. There is no program to specifically advocate for right now, more so in the kind of field of just promoting education of ADVs and maybe what can be done to prevent them, as opposed to an actual program that we are hoping to get funding for and develop as these subcommittees in the Marine Debris Work Group, or the ADV, sorry, I'm getting all of my work groups mixed up here, progress. So would anyone like to share any thoughts on what they see for this group doing, some committee goals? Anything that, I don't know if maybe from America's Great Loop Cruisers or from the USCG that you've noticed that might be, or LR right now, that might be a great way to kind of speak to the people and educate them on ADVs.
I'll jump in. This is Karen. I think that there are two very different classifications here that we have to address. And one is trailerable boats, that, you know, the smaller boats, usually with outboards. You know, those are, that's one whole issue in there. And it's probably, there are some alternatives for them, as I understand it, that some landfills will, if they have to dismantle them basically and cut them up in, you know, prescribed size pieces and that kind of thing, but there is a way for them to dispose of that. So if there is a process that people can follow, then we need to know exactly what those requirements are so we can give people that information. But then the other classification is boats, larger boats that are not trailerable. And we see a lot of those just sitting and sinking because people really don't have any idea what to do with them. So, you know, I think that we have to address those two types of boats really differently.
Great.
I was gonna say, so Boat US Foundation works on a national level. So we work with all the organizations, all the states, and our focus is education outreach to boaters. So our goals when it comes to ADV, on the education outreach side, we work with our network of towers for removal and things like that. But on the education and outreach, we really want to let boaters know how they can be responsible boat owners, what to do with your boat, because it varies from state to local to city. There's just so much variation. So providing those options and those opportunities, making sure that it is easy for them and isn't more expensive to dispose of your boat than it is to buy your boat. And to also let those that are responsible boat owners already know how the issue happens, and what they can do when they know about an ADV, and to kind of rally them around the issue, to help create funding sources, to help create the desire for this to not happen in their area. So those are a couple of our bigger goals. Tell the story about how ADVs happen, whether it's a commercial or a recreational boat, and how they can help solve the problem. And then we kind of step it down even more, that it's not just ADVs, but as marine debris in general, what you as a boater can do. And we try to connect all those messages together.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you.
I think Alana made a really important point in that it has to be affordable. So whatever alternative we provide for boat owners, and we do a lot of outreach to boaters on all kinds of issues. We have a no discharge zone in the Lynn Haven, so we're all the time educating people on that, and and marine debris and other issues, fuel issues, and all of that with boaters. And I just don't know what to tell them, frankly, about a boat that's no longer serviceable. So, we need some information, but whatever that alternative is, it has to be affordable. There's a cove in the North Landing River where people take their boats and sink them. And that's just common knowledge because they don't know what else to do with them.
Right.
So I was just going to add on, I completely agree with what our other folks have stated and some of the things we need to work on. And I don't know if I know there was discussion before about tracking. So that may be something that part of our outreach is to let people know if you come across an abandoned derelict vessel, here's who you can contact so we can add it into the database. I think that's going to be a big piece of any future legislation, is having a good framework, right? What are we actually dealing with? What's it look like? And the other thing is there any current resources in Virginia, and whether it's the coastal Virginia or the lakes or other areas that people can turn their boats into, or what are their options, or if they're no longer able to maintain their vessel before it becomes a derelict vessel? I don't know if any of the other groups are working on that, but I feel like that would be also a good piece for an outreach, is to let people know, here's what you can do, or, other boaters know. It goes back with that responsible boat owning that was discussed earlier.
I think the what to do is so huge, because it's not just the boaters. Yesterday was the general working group meeting, and we had asked all of our tow companies in Virginia to get on the call. So there was about 4 or 5 of them that were on the call yesterday. And a couple of them reached out to me afterwards and were like, I have boats. Who do I tell? And even to the point of the town and the boaters are calling me, asking me what they're supposed to do with this derelict boat. So having people understand that's one of the biggest issues we see across almost all the states, is boaters knowing what to do when they see it. I think Oregon has, mostly they know who to call. Some of them go other places, but it's just what to do is huge.
I think that's definitely a major goal this committee could focus on and include for some of these outreach products, especially where, as Lieutenant Corporal Francisco, did I get that right? I hope, mentioned, we even just had a resident call in here on the shore yesterday or the day before about that vessel. And I went, Jeff, here, can we put it on the survey and in the list, because we don't have a formal way. So it's definitely something to share even with local government and planning district commissions.
Yeah, Jeff, I have a few
things like that.
I have a few boats to add to your list, Jeff.
You have the survey, or do you need me to resend the link? I can send that out to everybody here.
Yeah, if you could send the survey, I've got a couple of the towers that wanted to report some, and even ones that were on board, in the past with us to do removal and apply for NOAA grants with us to do these removal projects. But when I say, okay, who has the authority to tell you can remove this, they were like, we don't know. We don't know what. Yeah,
I will definitely send that list out, and we've tried to add it to the email blasts, for the upcoming meetings, but I could definitely send it out. And we've got some great feedback so far from individuals that have just, spotted these boats. So basically, just to answer some of the questions here, I was kind of trying to bring up my screen. Can everyone see that Word document?
Sure can.
Okay, great. So this is that marine debris reduction plan. So before I get into that, I wanted to answer some of the questions that came up. Someone had said that overlapping with other committees is definitely something that we want to do as part of this framework, just as the work group, regardless of the plan I'm about to talk about. Policy and funding are the 2 subcommittees that really are kind of they have the biggest lift, if you will, in terms of changing the law if there is something if there's a gap, and I've identified plenty of gaps there. Funding, there's a total lack of funding. And so those are the overall things we need to get through. But the removal committee and this committee can go and have sort of a wish list of those very questions. We'll have that from the meeting summary and be in touch with you all to say, these are our barriers, or this is what we'd like to do, but we need help kind of on the front end. So that's really kind of one thing that we can kind of take down as a takeaway from this meeting, is that there are a lot of great ideas, a lot of channels to reach people, but we just need to have that message that's A, correct, and B, is actionable, that people can really digest. And it's we're actually working on a flyer right now to send out to some marinas that's really condensed It'll have a little Q code that you can kind of scan and a link to the survey. So anybody walking by can see this thing nailed to a telephone pole or in someone's office, and they can report. So we're really trying to get that kind of grassroots crowdsourcing as well, in addition to going through the marinas and several other groups. So that's really kind of hopefully touching on some of the things we've heard here. I think there was one question about jurisdiction, and we've had the great folks with the Coast Guard talk about some of their limitations, DEQ as well, VMRC and DWR. Basically, I believe only DWR and VMRC can remove the vessel, but they don't have funding to do so, and there's a huge risk of liability for them to do so. And there's also, if a private contractor were to go and say, hey, I want to take the initiative and just get this out of the water, they would have to get the title and the registration for that vessel. And that's obviously a very difficult process, as many of you know, to track down the latest owner. So there's that sort of issue. There's also the point about taking care and just disposing these vessels in an environmentally responsible way with landfills and that sort of thing. We are currently reaching out to landfills. The removal subcommittee led by Megan are going to be reaching out to those folks in coastal landfills to get an idea of those requirements so that that can be a standardized list to be sent to people as sort of part of a fact sheet. And then also to look at recycling. We had a gentleman from Rhode Island give a talk in yesterday's work group meeting about a pilot that NOAA is funding for them to use fiberglass hulls as a fuel source for concrete and cement mixing. So not actually using the substance itself to build anything, but to burn it and use that as a fuel source. So there are some things we also want to talk about with costs. That was another thing that just came up. It's really hard to pin down a per unit cost. Everything seems to be different. People use different metrics. But that's one of the things that Katie and Mitchell and myself are trying to work on as part of sort of a final report to the whole work group in conjunction with William & Mary's Law School Coastal Policy Center folks that are working on some of the legal aspects in a white paper. So that's kind of the end goal. So by the end of the spring, hopefully, we'll have some of these documents that then people can literally copy and paste into a flyer, into an email, into a listserv email to their marina group, and have sort of here's the fast facts and the next steps and what you can do, what you can't do. So that those are all actionable items that we want to tackle in this whole process. So I hope that kind of brings things together before I get into the plan. Any questions, or Jessica, anything else?
I was just gonna say on that, just looking at this screenshot right here, would you guide us in the sense of starting to consider either divvying up some of these material factoids, what have you, that we want to call them, and coming to some next meetings with ideas or resources? Do you want us to work on that as a group during each meeting? How is CZM kind of guiding that effort?
Well, first, just folks will notice the 2025 date. Don't let that scare you that we're not doing anything. This is just a 5-year plan. So we're hoping that the ADV portion will get done by the end of this year, like really make some progress and policy changes. And that will allow these other things to go forward and continue on a rolling basis to update and reach out to people and get that feedback. So that's where the date comes in. So to your question, Jessica, about divvying up the tasks, really the biggest lift is being done by each of the subcommittees and the ADV work group in general, with the meetings at once every other month. That's more of the updates things, as some of you all have seen yesterday, just high level stuff. So at the subcommittee level, I think it's definitely appropriate to divide these tasks, identify. I know we had some introductions, and it's obvious what people do with their day jobs and how that factors into this. But if we could divide up some subgroups that are working on these things, that pull together a Google Doc and a wish list for another subcommittee, or the person that's designated to reach out to marinas and that sort of thing. And then someone who can work on a factoid sheet. So I think identifying those tasks and then divvying them up is very appropriate for this subcommittee level.
Thank you. That's the only question I had for you before we move on. I'm not sure if anyone else wanted to ask prior to
Peter, I had a question.
Go ahead.
This is Neil Sturman for Peter. I just had a question. Will those disposal sites that you referenced on the coast, will they also include inland waterways and like places like Smith Mountain Lake where we can dispose of derelict vessels?
Yes. Yes, and that's a really good point, Neil, because we've made it pretty clear that the ADV group is going to involve those inland waterways that are really important to the effort. Certainly in a fairness thing on a statewide policy, if we were to add a fee, making sure that all the water bodies are covered. Where that does maybe different, I would have to talk to the folks with that marine debris reduction plan, is where their kind of the Venn diagram stops. Are they not going to consider those things, and are we kind of on our own in the state ADV thing versus this being incorporated into the larger plan? So I'll definitely get clarification on that and lobby as hard as I can to that group to include it, because it would make no sense to be doing it on one level and then not be incorporated into this larger thing. So we definitely want the inland waterways. Yep.
Thank you. I think one of the biggest problems that I'm seeing on some of these other subcommittees is the liability issues. If you find a derelict boat and you attach a rope to it, who becomes liable? And I think that's something we really have to address, mainly besides the funding and disposal, because nobody wants to take that liability, to remove those boats. And that's one of the biggest things I think we have to figure out going forward.
Yep.
That's it.
That's excellent point, Neil. That's something that's we're really trying to hammer out in that policy subcommittee, because as I said a second ago, it's a really big obstacle to having all these actionable items and great brainstorming if we don't have certainty on the legal ramifications of that, the jurisdictional limitations. A lot of that has been fleshed out and just through these meetings, but to really kind of get that white paper and updates from the Coastal Policy Center law school folks, to really say, bullet point, number one, you cannot do this. We need to change the law to do that. So I think laying out also a document from the subcommittee showing, I wouldn't say sophisticated like a flow chart or anything fancy, but just sort of, we want to go from A, B, C, and here's the hiccup between B and C. And that is going to be the item that then we report to the other subcommittees and say, hey, we need help on this. Like, you guys need to do your job so that we can move forward.
Yeah, North Carolina seemed to have some good ideas. I think they're a little ahead of Virginia with the ADV problem, where as far as they just have to look for the last registered owner, not if it changed hands 3 times between owners, and send them like a 30-day notification and then proceed, removing the vessel. So I think they had some pretty good ideas about it.
That's correct. Just so the group here, if you weren't able to participate in the policy first meeting on February 10th, we had a guest speaker with North Carolina's Department of Wildlife, who's the head boating administrator for the state. And their model is such that they have such, I guess, liability insurance built up as a state agency that they're not worried about going out and with money that they've gotten from their state legislature to go remove, it was mostly vessels that have been displaced from hurricanes, a little bit different. I think it was just coastal and just really related to hurricane. And they basically said, well, we just go there and then we go pay the contractor, and the contractor never has to get that title. They don't have to worry about liability because we got it covered. So, sue us if you want. So that was kind of their approach, which I think is a little bit different. You have to kind of make sure that our DWR folks, what their funding structure is. That might be another question that I pose to them of, we know what your jurisdictions are, we know what your limitations are. Funding is always an issue, but what's the liability issue? What's the what's your backing? I think is something. So I got that on the list here.
Yeah, thank you. That was a good point. Go ahead.
Yep.
I have a question or a comment. One is, I know you touched on this, but I just wanted to emphasize the jurisdiction question, because I know that's come up for us. We had, it's about 2 years ago now, a marine construction barge that was abandoned in a creek, and it had floated up into the wetlands, and the construction company was out of business. And trying to just even figure out, first we contacted our local marine police and they said it wasn't their jurisdiction, and talked to VMRC and they said they can't do anything about, so the whole kind of just that, so that jurisdiction question is always kind of a hard one to pin down. And then my second question was, if like the example that you just gave in North Carolina, where they have a state program, they went and got these boats. What are they doing with them once they get them? What do they do with them? How are they disposing of them?
To the second question, I believe North Carolina has a list of approved landfills. So in that way, we are mirroring that effort to try to get our own list of both coastal and inland ones. So I do think they have a pretty well-oiled process to just get rid of them. And it is expensive, as it is everywhere, but they have that, the contractor doesn't have to worry about reaching out. I think the state says, here, take it here, we'll pay for it, just go ahead and do it. Again, that gets a little tricky with, again, their sort of jurisdiction they were allowed, not jurisdictional legal sense, but sort of what qualified was, again, these hurricane displaced boats. So it wasn't talking between privately held upland, publicly owned bottom, everything in between, marshes. It was just, if you can prove that this boat was displaced by a hurricane, then it's okay. Otherwise, they weren't doing anything inland. They weren't going and having a nice boat that peacefully sank in a marina, not due to a storm. That was kind of off limits. And they started using up their money pretty fast, because I believe there was a shrimp trawler about 60 foot that was, I think, $100,000 to remove, and they were only given $1 million. So that was just one vessel, and it was already 10%. So that's another thing to kind of come out that we will get from William & Mary's law school, kind of a table of these overlaps between how different states work. I sort of have that. I could do a back of the napkin drawing, but they're going to really have something that's very good to reference, very professional. To your other point, Karen, about the jurisdictions, I think I already kind of slid into answering a little bit of that, but was that in you said, a tidal marsh? So it would be either privately owned shoreline or maybe a marsh island or something. So
it was a tidal marsh, and it was a privately owned shoreline, a residential shoreline. And so trying to figure out where responsibility lies is very complicated sometimes.
So yeah, so this, just real quick, from what BMRC said in previous calls, they said that if a boat was washed up onto someone's private property, that could be upland, it could be non-tidal wetland, whatever it is, if it came from basically a marine area, they would work with that property owner, assuming that it's not their own vessel, to publicly notice something in the paper, track down that owner, and if nobody responds, I believe it was 30 days, maybe a little longer, they would be able to say, hey, now the owner, you can dispose of it. And they wouldn't give them any financial help or physical assistance, but they wouldn't be a liability for the property owner through no fault of their own to remove it. So not great, but that's their process. The Marine Police, I think it would probably come down. Yeah.
What does a homeowner do with a marine construction barge?
Oh yeah, exactly. What's going to move that? I know.
It costs the city of Norfolk, it costs the city $10,000 to remove 2 abandoned boats from a city marina. That's just, wow. I don't know where that kind of money could come from.
Folks, I don't want to cut this great conversation short, but just in respect of everybody's time, we are coming up on 12:15. So Jeff, I want to give you the chance to, I think you said you wanted something else to talk about with the plan and their outreach elements. And then if we want to kind of talk next meetings, maybe we need to make them a little longer and kind of talk frequency, so we've got some consistency moving forward.
Well, I apologize for talking so much. I really appreciate everyone's questions. All I'll say here is that I think it's probably best if I share, either Katie Register or myself will share this plan so that folks can look at it, can make changes in a Google Drive. We can also just give you a Word document. You can send us back highlighted track changes. We're happy to do that to kind of give you time to digest this and not try to rush through it and make, even if we started this process a half an hour ago, I think it would still be, you know, not enough time to let it marinate and to kind of give follow-up questions to myself or Katie about what we're trying to do in better context. So I'm sure there's something I left out. So we will get this to you as a follow-up.
I love that. I was going to ask if we could get a copy of this because I'm definitely visual. It helps me to read and kind of soak it in and then come back to you. So thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on, Jeff?
Nope. I'll shut up.
I like hearing you talk. It's been so long since we've had meetings all together. So we do have some time if anyone has any comments. I also just want to kind of cover what everyone's thinking in terms of how often we should meet and if maybe we should make the meetings closer to an hour and a half, like some of the other subcommittees. Just get some feelers out from y'all if we want to set a certain day of the month or a certain day of certain week every month. But I'm sure everyone's calendars are slam packed. I know mine fills up quick, so I feel like the sooner we can kind of get some dates set moving forward, the easier it'll be. Any thoughts on meeting for an hour and a half instead of an hour? Yay, nay?
Sounds like a great idea.
Okay, thank you. So we'll do.
Silence on the line's always scary.
You don't want me to start making all the decisions, guys. Great conversation. Caution the group on duplicating efforts. Julie, hold on. Let me read your message out here.
Sorry, I was going to jump in, but I didn't want to overstep someone's conversation. I just put it in the chat, but I just, you know, a lot of these conversations I'm sure are going to be answered or attempted to be answered by other subcommittees. And so for our role in prevention and education, I think our first step should be to set up a framework of how we're communicating all the questions that we have, let alone the public and the people that we're hearing from, the citizens that we're hearing from, and communicating that to the other subcommittees for them to answer. And then on the flip side, setting up a framework for how those subcommittees can communicate their steps, their decisions and milestones back to us so that we can package them up. So rather than trying to, you know, work to answer some of these questions at the same time as these other subcommittees, I don't want us to duplicate that effort too much. I'd rather us focus on how we're going to communicate back and forth between those other subcommittees. And then step 2, communicate that back out to citizens and voter groups and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, the first thing I think we can really start on is communicating our questions to them and setting up that framework. So just trying to refocus there. I think setting up meetings for an hour and a half is a great idea. And then I think we should really set our meeting rhythm to the rhythms of the other subcommittees. So if they start going monthly, maybe we should start going monthly so that we can get, you know, monthly brief outs from them or something to that effect. So I would say maybe reach out to the other subcommittee heads and see what they're doing, and then we can follow suit. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, I like those suggestions. I think the frameworks are a great idea, and maybe could even be a Google Doc of sorts so that the other subcommittees can have access. Jeff, do you happen to know the frequency of other subcommittee meetings?
Yes. So the overall work group is once every 2 months. So it was early January, and then we just had it yesterday. The subcommittees, we had February 10th was the policy one. The next one is about, they're about a month. So it was the February 10th, and then funding was the 19th, and then the 22nd was removal, if I can remember correctly. And I've got a doodle poll open for the funding one for the next meeting. I think the 19th is the next policy one. So then kind of after that, sometime in March 20s or so, that'll be funding, and then removals set to do theirs as well. So you guys are kind of the end of the month, or early, you know,
for the very beginning.
So either be early April, yeah, or the very beginning, yeah, yeah. So, right. But again, if it flips, if it's like first week of April, or it's fine.
Does the first week work for folks? I know we kind of scooted this one in close with the poll and figuring it out. Or would you prefer the end of the month and then we'll go from there? Any oppositions to the first of the month? Beginning of the month. Okay. So I think maybe that's good. We're on the 4th. That gives us some time to have for all the other subcommittees to meet, and then I can get an update. Jeff can get an update. We can sort out who will do that. Would you like to keep on with Thursdays? And we can set, rather than doing a doodle poll every month, because I think that gets to be a bit overwhelming, and allows for calendars to fill up mid doodle polling. Maybe say the first Thursday of the month. Does that work for folks? Works for Renee? Let's see if it works for me.
That works, yeah.
Yep.
That would be the 1st of April, right?
Yes.
Around the same time, like 11:30.
That was going to be the next question. I'm happy with the lunch hour. I prefer to keep them morning through late afternoon as opposed to going all the way at 4 or 5 o'clock. Just I know some folks don't work past 4. Some folks don't want to be in a meeting till 5 o'clock while they're trying to wrap everything up at the end of the day. So does anyone have an opposition to this 11:30 hour?
I personally couldn't do it, but I have standing meetings Thursdays up until 1 o'clock.
Okay.
So, but I'm happy to attend when I can.
Tracy said that, Tracy, did you jump on the call after we did introductions?
I just got in. I was on the video call.
I was gonna say I didn't recognize you. Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. So maybe, since there's a few folks and definitely we want to have your input, we could say 11:30 to 2 o'clock on Thursdays. Is that a better time? Alana works.
That works. That works.
That works.
All right, so hour and a half meetings, 2 p.m., first Thursday of the month. I know that things will come up. So of course, as Jeff said, these will be recorded. We'll have meeting summaries. I think I can speak for Jeff, but for myself, definitely, if you have any input or items on the agenda or things that you want to talk about or ideas to bring, just shoot them in an email to me. I'll add them to the agenda or make a note of it to talk about. Or be able to pass your question on to the right person.
I missed the name in the chat that was talking about the framework, which I think is super fantastic idea. And maybe that's the homework before the next meeting is everybody comes with their questions that they've heard or they are looking for to start that conversation.
I think that's a great way to start. And that was Julie that mentioned that. And Alana, to that, I think that would be a great agenda item. We could start with that each meeting, just kind of a round robin of questions. Or what I can do is create that Google document, share it with everyone at our next meeting, and we can put the questions in there so that we have them written down and all in one spot for folks to reach. Does that sound good? Yeah, okay. Doc for cues, and we can kind of go over questions that can be part of our agenda each month.
Just to make sure on the Google Doc, I know that with DEQ,
Yes.
there are some issues and inconsistency and be able to access that. So, let Jessica know if you have an alternate email or if there's some, just make sure the invite comes in, because that can be incredibly frustrating when you go in and it says, you don't have access. So I know that some folks would say people that.
Thank you, Jeff, for pointing that out. You're right. We have had some Google Doc. We just need to tell DEQ to allow Google Doc and webcams. Always.
Yeah. I was a rebel. I got my own webcam for personal use. Anyway, so, well, this is great, folks. Thanks so much, Jessica, for stepping up and leading this. Katie, Register, and myself will try to be making all these meetings. I mean, it's really important for us to be there and answer your questions and that sort of thing. But Jessica's really taken the lead on this. So hats off to her, and also with Megan with the removal committee. So it's great that you guys are running with us, and we'll have these things posted and meeting summaries and recording, you know, within a week, probably less than that for each of these things. So that's always a public resource for everyone to follow along and get the highlights. So don't worry if you don't, you know, make a meeting. We're happy to give you a recap and direct you to these resources. So thank you again.
Thank you all very much. And I will send out that ongoing calendar invitation. And then I guess I'll talk to Jeff about how best to send an email out with some of the stuff, and I'll send it over to you, Jeff. Is that?
Yep, we'll probably coordinate with Katie. She usually sends out a big email blast that touches on all the subcommittees to minimize the email traffic that you all are getting these days.
Well, great. Thank you, everyone. It was, yeah.
Oh, hey, sorry, Jessica.
Oh.
I just had one thought. Before the next meeting, would it be helpful? We have a lot of marinas that we work with that are members of our organization. Would it help to reach out to them and get some of the questions that they have, so I have a good idea about what people are having issues with to bring to the next meeting, so we can kind of add that in?
I think so. I think that's a great great place to go to. And I think too, locally, we can all, and maybe this is something we talk about next time, but places to go and ask these questions. I know there's different marinas, harbors, as well as our watermen that see a lot of this, and maybe we could ask some questions from them and even come up with sort of a list of folks to go out to and ask.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to get the marinas involved, because a lot of boats seem to center around marinas anyway. So
Yeah, people get, they're really, at least from our members, people get dumped on, you know, they're just.
Tracy, can I please ask you your last name, or for you to type it in the chat just so I can get you jotted down here for attendance?
I'm sorry.
Just your last name in the chat so I can get it down here for attendance, if you don't mind.
Got it. Okay. Oh, and one last thing, when we send out this email, whether it's coming from Jessica or part of Katie's overall one, everyone here, you know, will be on that list, and we can resend that Google Forms survey. So Elizabeth, you can get that to the marinas, and just anyone else, just to feel free to send it out. And we, you know, we'll eventually hopefully get a list of people that it's gone out to, but we can also kind of get that from when people email me and fill out the survey itself. I can kind of see who's reporting. So that'll be another resource.
Great. Well, if that's all, folks, I'm gonna say thanks, and I will see you all, or most of you, hopefully, next month. Great.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
You.
Bye.